One of the things that we are particularly concerned about is that in South Asia, we are seeing very high levels of wasting very early, so even among children less than 6 months, and that's a very unusual feature.
This is an ENN podcast for the Field Exchange 63 Child Wasting in South Asia Special Edition.
My name is Purnima Menon. I'm a senior research fellow with the International Food Policy Research Institute and have been based in our offices in South Asia for a dozen years now. My research is focused on maternal and child nutrition in the region. And mostly we're trying to understand through our research what the burden of malnutrition looks like, what its drivers are, what drivers of change have been like, and what kinds of solutions need to be put in place to reduce the burden of malnutrition in the region. One of the things that we have been examining and have been concerned about for several years is the very high burden of wasting among young children in South Asia. From the work that we've done over the years, especially exploring the drivers of wasting, it appears that the burden of wasting in South Asia is particularly high because maternal malnutrition is high, firstly, and feeding practices, particularly complementary feeding practices. So the feeding that starts when children are moving from breast milk towards family diets around the 6 to 24 month time frame, those complementary feeding practices are particularly poor. And then last but not least, there remains a high burden of infectious disease in the region. One of the things that we are particularly concerned about is that in South Asia, we are seeing very high levels of wasting very early, so even among children less than 6 months, and that's a very unusual feature. And that in particular is coming from maternal malnutrition and perhaps even some challenges with establishing early and exclusive breastfeeding early on. The priority actions for treatment and prevention need to be, in this region, need to be thought about a little bit differently from in other parts of the world. Firstly, the actions have to take a preventive stance very strongly and start way earlier than we might otherwise in other regions. So, we have to come in with actions around prevention that relate particularly to tackling maternal malnutrition, as well as the burden of sort of early childbearing. There's a lot of childbearing that's happening to adolescent girls, for example. So starting very early, firstly with what's happening in and around the areas of pregnancy, and then looking at firstly how to establish effective breastfeeding practices early on and effective complementary feeding practices. And then really making sure that, children are being tracked and identified early to be brought in, if needed, for treatment programs. Now, most of the treatment programs in the region are sort of patchy, so there aren't sort of uniform identification and treatment protocols that are connecting community and facility-based treatments. So that's something that needs a lot of attention across the region. There's a lot of evidence now, a lot of experience, and we need to bring all of these together. There's really no time to lose. The implications of the high levels of wasting in the region are not just related to mortality. There's also evidence now that the pattern of early wasting that we're seeing among young infants is predictive of later failures in linear growth for the same children. And so that means that not tackling wasting also has implications for the burden of stunting in the region.
Read the Child Wasting in South Asia Special Edition Field Exchange to find out more. Visit ennonline.net/FEX.